So today I want to talk to you guys about sleep. And this is coming from someone who struggled with sleep for over a decade. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm Andrew Huberman or like a neuroscientist, but I know what has worked for me. So I'm going to share that with you. And all the things that I've tried have come from a lot of these incredible doctors that talk online. But the reality is there's so much information and it can be overwhelming. And so we don't know where to start. So I'm going to tell you what I was like before when my sleep was utter shit, what my sleep like is now, and the steps that I've taken to get there. Okay. So let's preface this by anyone who doesn't know my story. I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist and control freak. I lived in fight or flight. Okay. Like, period. I lived in fight or flight all day long, right? Which just means that the way I responded to stress, I felt like I always had to be doing something. Slowing down felt very uncomfortable. Being too still felt very uncomfortable. So I was always overactive, hyperactive, hyper performing, all the things. Okay. So honestly, as long as I can remember, probably even starting in high school, I'm 36 now, I have had issues sleeping. And, uh, you know, coincidentally enough, my mother also struggles with sleep. And if I'm, really going to go deep with it, probably some of that anxiety I have around sleep really was from her, not blaming her, just kind of piecing things together. Um, but if I talk about it in more recent years where I was very familiar with what the sleep patterns is because I was in fight or flight all day long, sleep subconsciously felt unsafe for my body, which is wild to say because we all know we need sleep and we all know how much better we do in life when we're sleeping. But that level of slowing down, even though it's good for me, felt very unsafe to my nervous system. And I always say the nervous system doesn't care if you're happy, healthy, growing, successful. It does not care about any of that. It just cares about what it needs to do to keep you alive and to help you survive. And because I have lived most of my life in fight or flight, slowing down is just it just was very challenging for my nervous system on a subconscious level. So in my adult life, especially in my last career, which is what I can remember most familiar from most I can recall it the easiest. Sorry guys. Um I would honestly only probably get 3 to 4 nights a week of a full night's sleep. My sleep was always broken. So I usually had no problem falling asleep, but once 2, 3 o'clock in the morning hit, sometimes four, I'd be wide awake with a cortisol shot, which essentially is my stress, our stress hormone, right? The hormone that gets produced when we're responding to stress. I would get a spike of that. And so I didn't know that's what was happening at the time in my body, but how that would look is all of a sudden I'd be wide awake. I'd usually be thinking about work, what I needed to do, what I needed to get done. Did I miss anything? And it wasn't always about work, but I'd say probably 80% of the time it was. And I'd be wide awake, spiraling 2, 3 hours. And, at that time, because I didn't know any better, this is years ago, I would just pick up my phone and I would start scrolling. I would, um, maybe put on a podcast. Like I just start to occupy my mind because I was wide awake, right? Sometimes I'd have to put notes in my phone of things I didn't want to forget. Um, but I would wake up at 2 or 3. I'd stay up probably till about 5 or 6. And then I'd try and sneak in an hour before I had to be up at 7. And then you could only imagine how my mornings were starting off. I was anxious. I had dread. My mornings were rushed. I had to get to work. I didn't eat breakfast. Um, there's just so many things. And so I was highly dysregulated. And here's the brutal part about this cycle is when you're someone who's prone to fight or flight, you when you don't get sleep, it perpetuates the fight or flight. But then as the fight or flight gets perpetuated, it makes it harder to sleep. So it's like this vicious cycle, right? It's like my nervous system is activated all day long, super high stress, super high stress. And then when I need the sleep, my body doesn't even really feel quote unquote safe to sleep. So then I get broken sleep and then the cycle repeats. And it's awful. It's awful. Again, I did it for at least 10 to 15 years that I remember. And it might have even been a little bit before that. So, um, when I tell you that the sleep that I get today, like, this sounds dramatic, but if I had to gauge my level of success, it's based on my sleep. Honestly, and that sounds wild. And like for the record, I have a lot of clients who actually don't struggle with sleep that bad. They will struggle with like they can sleep through the night but they don't wake up rested, but they're not having broken sleep like I did. So this is more for anyone who's kind of dealing with that. Um but like I'm a completely different person now. And when I look back on the fact that I lived that way, like only 3 or 4 nights a week with a full night's rest, I had to have been a monster. Like honestly, like I think people still liked me and I think I found a way to fake it till I make it. And like I obviously, I had a really great career and built up a lot of great things, but like I look back and think, how the fuck did I function that way for so long? Like, it's wild because now, if I like, right before my cycle or before my period, I might have 1 or 2 nights sleep. And that alone is like so disruptive to my life. And that's like 1 or 2 nights a week now, based compared to like 3 or 4 nights a week or now I'm only dealing with it once or twice a month. Sorry, I'm saying 1 or 2 nights a month. And before I used to do it with 3 or 4 nights a week. So it was like way more happening before. And like, yeah, it's wild. So again, I want to tell you guys what I've done, the corrections I've made to help with my sleep that have made a dramatic improvement, and hope that it can help you too. So, uh, first off, I will say before I go into the actual facts or the little tips, sorry, the number one thing you need to do to get a good night's sleep is you need to learn how to regulate your nervous system consistently. I just did an episode on this. It's probably going to be last week. It comes out by the time this one comes out. So go ahead and listen to that. But you set up a good night's sleep before nighttime. Like the quality of your sleep gets dictated when you first wake up in that morning, and what you do throughout that day is going to determine if you get a good night's sleep that night. Okay. Now I will have a disclaimer that women, we have to be conscious of our hormones. They fluctuate so much, depending on what week we're in our cycle. Men don't have to deal with that as much. So women, you got to give yourself a little bit of grace if you're struggling with sleep. Like I just know now those couple days before my period, I'm going to struggle. Instead of beating myself up about it, I just know that it's going to happen. I let it be, and then I catch up when I need to. But so ladies, just give yourself a little bit of grace in regards to that if you are still going through a menstrual cycle. But you do set up the quality of your sleep based on what you do throughout the day. Okay. So this is not just what happens right when you go to bed that matters. It's what happens throughout the day. Right. So I am going to focus more on the evening and the morning, but like things like exercise, that sets up your body for a good night's sleep. Regulating your nervous system consistently throughout the day. So like allowing yourself to come down from fight or flight, allowing yourself to come out of freeze throughout the day, not just waiting till the end of the day to do it. Doing incremental regulating practices throughout the day is also going to help set you up for a good night's sleep. Okay. Obviously, like not having caffeine past 3 p.m., minimizing your alcohol intake, like all these things are going to factor into that. And these are obviously things you do throughout the day. Okay. So keep in mind that. Now, let's get to before bed. This is my practice. Hopefully it helps. So first thing is I try to not eat at least 2 hours before I go to sleep. So if I know I'm going to be sleeping by 10, I try not to consume anything past 8 p.m. My little snacky boyfriend likes to challenge me on this all the time. He's a late night snacker, but I try not to eat anything at least 2 hours before I go to bed. Okay. That just helps me digest better. That just allows my body to like not be completely empty by the time I go to bed. But just, allows it to settle in. That's really worked for me. And then, sometimes I do have late night clients because my clients are in different time zones. So sometimes I am with a client till about 8 p.m. But as soon as I'm done, I make sure to regulate. Okay. So I do something that's going to bring me out of that work mode and into like a more balanced state. And I'm usually balanced when I'm with my clients as well too, but I'm very conscious of that. So maybe that's going for a little quick walk. Maybe that's doing some breathing exercises. Maybe that's just getting into my body and out of my head a little bit. Like I try to have a very distinct moment of separation from being in work mode into being present in now my personal and home and my rest state. So I do something to regulate. And again, if you don't know what regulating your nervous system is, go back and check out that previous episode I did on it. I give you all the tips and the play by play of what you need, but I consciously make sure I regulate my nervous system as I'm preparing for bed. Okay. Now, screen time. This is something people talk about often. There's a lot of debate about it. And the reality is, guys, like I'm going to shoot it to you straight. Like obviously you don't want to be on your phone or like looking at screens right before bed, but the reality is they're everywhere and it's hard to avoid. Okay? Like I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everyone can just shut it off and be okay with that. It's difficult for all of us. It's just the reality of where we're at in society right now. And it is for me too some nights, right? So I will let myself have screen time. I try to wean myself off of it at least 30 minutes before I plan to sleep. Okay. Um, and if I do, for some reason, if I'm having a night where I am still on my phone before, I'm very, very conscious of what type of information I'm taking in. Okay. So for me personally, I don't want to know anything about business before I go to bed because business to me gets me activated. That's the last thing I need for my sleep. Okay. So I don't consume any business content before I go to sleep. I do not consume anything that's like just anything obviously like negative or that brings up any like stress related responses. So I never watch the news period, but I'm definitely not watching it before bed. um I'm not consuming any media or social media about like, you know, things that are like happening in like the Diddy trial or like celebrities, like anything that's just not something I want to take to bed with me, I'm not consuming. Okay. And on that note, I have a lot of clients, and one of the main indicators I can tell people are burnt out or stuck in fight or flight is they like to consume true crime or like murder mysteries before bed. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is a sign of a dysregulated nervous system. Okay. This is a sign of burnout because when we consume those things, I know we're all just like, but it's interesting and it's intriguing and I want to learn about human behavior and like, hey, that's cool. Fine. But if you want to do that, you need to be mindful of what time of day you're consuming that at. Okay. Because consuming it right before bed versus consuming it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon are two completely different things. Okay. And it's because of our brain waves and our brain patterns. If you ever want to go deep into this, my recommendation is go listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about this stuff a lot. But essentially, in layman's terms, right before we go to sleep and right when we wake up are when our brain waves are the slowest. Okay. And when they're the slowest, they're the most influenceable. Okay. They're the most impressionable. So that means whatever we're taking in when our brain waves are slow are leaving a way more lasting impact on our nervous system, on our mind, on our body than if we were to consume it in the middle of our day when our brain waves are faster and we're more analytical and critical in a more analytical or critical thinking mind. Okay. So I always tell my clients, if you watch a murder mystery right before bed, your body's going to feel like it's in the murder mystery. If you consume it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to know you're watching TV. That's the difference. Okay. So what you're consuming right before bed matters. And essentially you just need to think, do I want to take this to sleep with me? Right? Like, do I want to relive this in my sleep? Okay. So I try to cut out any screens again, at least 30 minutes before. And if I am going to consume something, it's going to be something calming, something sweet, something funny, something uplifting, like something that I don't mind taking to bed. Okay. And to be honest, this is another trick of mine. When I do finally get to the point of closing my eyes and laying there, if I can't fall asleep right away, my default is to think about happy memories. Like I think about, oh, this sounds so corny. I think about like the first date I had with my boyfriend. And I think about like, I had this really good time with my niece the other weekend. And I go through those moments. And because they're calming to my nervous system, it usually will help me transition to a sleep state. Okay. And of course, there's other healthy things you can do before bed. Reading a book not always puts me to sleep. I haven't picked up a book in a while, like honestly speaking, but obviously reading a book before bed. Meditating before bed is great. I used to have a meditation practice right before bed. I have one in the mornings, which I'm going to get to. But like there's something called yoga nidra, which is essentially almost like transitions your body into a rest state. It's not a complete sleep. But if I have clients that have trouble falling asleep, I'll often recommend a yoga nidra where it kind of just walks you through um, isolation in the body to get you to a point of like almost between being awake and being asleep. But usually that's enough to kind of transition you into a full sleep or at least a rest state. So that's a great thing you can do. And yoga nidra, there's tons of resources on YouTube. I love an app called Insight Timer that has lots of different meditation stuff there. But you could listen to that before bed and that puts you into a good state as well too. Okay. Now, with that being said, I do not sleep with my phone in the bedroom. Okay. So if you are going to be listening to something before bed, I do want you to think about the fact that, if you're going to follow my recommendations, you're going to have to get up and put your phone in another room. But, that's neither here nor there. That's something that you can figure out. Okay. So let's talk about the phone in the bedroom. I made this change about 2 years ago. And what sparked it was actually, you guys know I love it, the Diary of a CEO podcast. And he was interviewing one of the board members, I believe she was, of Whoop, which is essentially a wellness tracking tool. It tracks your sleep, it tracks your heart rate variability. It's great. And she was talking in this interview and she said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here. She said that when you take your phone to bed, you are taking everything that's in it to bed with you. Okay. So when you're laying in bed and you're scrolling on Instagram, you're letting 200 people into your bedroom unfiltered with no control over what they're going to bring in there. And it's the same thing that when you look at it first thing in the morning. And when I heard that, I went, ugh. Like it instantly just made my skin crawl, like, oh my God, because like my bedroom and my sleep now, my bedroom is the most sacred place in my home for me. And especially because I struggled for so many years, like my bedroom is my sanctuary. And when she said that when you're scrolling, you're bringing in all those people, I felt so vulnerable and so raw and immediately felt like I needed to protect myself. Right. So and that goes just beyond social media. That goes into like all the people that can reach you on your phone. So obviously you could put it on do not disturb, which could help. But for me, that's not enough because I consciously know, like if my phone's by the bed, there's like this subconscious knowing that people are still right there, even if the buzzer's not going off, they're just coming through. That was too much for me. So like your text messages, your phone calls, your emails, your socials, everyone is connected to you through that little device. And when I thought about the fact that they were coming into my room with me every night, immediately I was like, nope. As soon as I heard that recording, I was like, that night or that podcast, that night, boom, the phone's never been in the bedroom with me since. Okay. So for me, I sleep with it either in the kitchen or in my bathroom, right off of my room. And I do set an alarm. Okay. And so that when the alarm goes off in the morning, I physically have to get up and go shut it off myself. Okay. Now, that works for me because I'm not a super heavy sleeper. I know some of my clients have mentioned, like, Minh-Thu, if that goes off, I'm probably not going to even get up to shut it off. So you might want to consider getting like a separate alarm clock, like an old school alarm clock that's strictly there just to wake you up. And there's lots of different versions now. Like one of my clients has one that is it's like it mimics the sun coming up. So the light from the sun, which is a great way to wake up, by the way. And so it's an alarm that goes off and gradually brings light into the room that resembles the sun. There's lots of great alternatives that you can have, so you don't have to have your phone in there. Okay. The other thing I'll address with that is I know some of my clients with kids, they're like, but what if the kids call and what if there's an emergency? Like, I totally get that. So, this works for me because I'm not in that situation. I don't have children, so I don't want to pretend I know what that's like. If your kids are teenagers and they're out, obviously you want to be aware of that. But maybe there's a way you can even just set the phone not on your bedstand, but it's in in part of the room where you could still hear it, but it's not right beside you. God forbid the kids do call. And obviously I would say in those cases, put your phone on do not disturb and then have them as special contacts that can get through, right? So no one else can ring through except your emergency contacts, your kids, your mom, your dad, your spouse, whoever the case is. But at least try and create some distance, at least 6 feet, right? Because aside from just the constant access through your phone, there's obviously so much EMF technology or EMF rays that are coming through your phone, which are terrible for you, cancer causing, like those devices being on us all day. Like that's a whole nother tangent I can get on, but they're like, there's way more infertility because of men keeping phone in their pockets and women keeping them by their breasts. And like, there's just so many more health defects that are happening these days. And the biggest thing that's changed is the proximity of our phones and how much they're on us. So the other part of it too is just from the EMF, trying to get that away from your body and away from your head. That's why I recommend at least 6 feet. You could also get EMF protectors. There's a great company called Airs Tech. There's a few of them that I have like on my phone and my computer that help. What they do is they convert the rays that come through the EMF and transform them in a way where they're not as harmful to your body. So you could also do that as well too as another measure. There's also like shungite and obsidian, like dark stones and crystals that can also help. So there's lots of options to help prevent the EMF penetration and rays. But again, just best practice, try to keep the phone away from you. Okay. So now we're in bed. Some of you might need some white noise. You could put a fan on you. Some of you might need to make sure it's super dark. You could sleep with an eye mask. Those are all things that work fine. Now, let's talk about if you happen to wake up in the middle of the night, like I did for a very long time. And I do occasionally, every once in a while now too. It's very rare, but I do occasionally. So my recommendation is if you wake up in the middle of the night, again, you're probably going into fight or flight and your body's going, oh, we've been laying still for too long. And that could only be a matter of hours. We need to do something about it. So then again, cortisol spikes, something comes up. So first off, what really helped me is don't judge yourself. Because I remember when that used to happen, I'd be like, why am I up? I don't want to be up. I want to go to sleep. Why can't my brain shut off? Please shut off. And I'd like fight it so hard. I was so mad that I was awake because I was so tired. I've learned to just be like, okay, I'm up. What's going on? You know what I mean? Just give yourself a little bit of grace. Okay. And my colleague Laura Larios was the first person who told me that. And I took it to heart. Just give yourself some grace. Okay. And then we have to think about regulating. Okay. So again, chances are your body is in fight or flight, which is why you're waking up. So the regulating practice for fight or flight is to slowly get your body gradually slowing down. Because typically in fight or flight, it's like move, 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 do. We want to gradually slow you down. Now, I realize you're sleeping. So you're like, Minh-Thu, how much more slow can I get? What I have found has helped for me is if I'm in fight or flight, and after laying there and kind of trying to talk myself off the ledge, if I can't come off of it, I do move. So if I'm by myself, I will stretch. I will just kind of like let myself be awake for the moment and like kind of cue my body that it's okay. Sometimes I will get up and do a little bit of a walk around just to get my body moving and know that it's okay. Because essentially what you're doing by getting up and moving is you're letting your body know that, hey, there's no real danger here. I'm gonna work with you and what you're saying you need right now, which is some movement. But this is not something we need to keep going on. Okay. So maybe that's a little bit of stretching. You could also try and do some breathing, right? So doing some breath work exercises, um, like just like a simple 4-7-8, inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. You could do something like that. And sometimes you just also have to, like, for me, I just have to entertain what's happening in my mind. Okay, so what are you thinking about? You're worried about this, this, and this. Okay, sometimes you got to get up and write a to-do list. Sometimes that's what you need to do. You just got to get up, pen and paper, write it out, write it out, write it out. What you've done is you've physically taken it out of your brain. You've put it on something that's permanent, which is the piece of paper, and you know it's going to be there for you to get back to in the morning. So a little bit of a brain dump. You could also do this before bed. That could be one of your regulating practices, is do a brain dump of anything that's been worrying you, anything you know you're going to have to get done for tomorrow, anything you want to prep for tomorrow. Like, you could also be proactive and do that before bed. But if you still happen to wake up in the middle of the night, you could do it then as well too. The main thing I want to instruct you of is don't engage yourself more to the point of like using your phone and using light. Okay. Because what happens is whenever we look at light, it's going to activate something called serotonin in our body. And serotonin is the hormone that wakes you up. Melatonin is the one that makes us go to sleep. I'm sure you guys have all heard of melatonin. You can take it, but we naturally produce it. So when things start to get dark and when our body starts to shut down, melatonin production goes up. When we wake up, serotonin production goes up, and light in the eyes activates serotonin. Okay. So when you now are waking up at 2 a.m. and you go to pick up your phone and start scrolling, like, it's going to soothe your nervous system for a moment because it's doing something, but it's also going to perpetuate you staying up. And that's why sometimes now you're up for 3 hours versus 30 minutes and getting back and still having a good runway of sleep ahead of you before you actually have to get up. Okay. So just please, by all means, try and not pick up your phone and stare at it and engage that part of your, like, your eyes and your brain in that way. Again, consuming God knows what at that time of night. I have told clients sometimes that if they really struggle, you could put a meditation on in your ears to help you go back to sleep. But again, so if you got to look at your phone to just like turn it on quick, okay, but don't stare at it. Don't like fill your brain with things again at 3 o'clock in the morning. Cause again, also brain waves are slow. So whatever you're consuming at that time is going to severely impact you. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Now, I'm backtracking a little bit, but one thing I do want to touch on is like, even though I struggled with sleep for so many years, I was never a believer in smoking weed before bed or taking sleeping pills, even taking melatonin, even though we naturally produce that. And this is my reasoning. Even though I was struggling so much, I knew if I took those things and they helped, I wouldn't have to get to the root cause of what was actually causing me to have a hard time to sleep in the first place. Okay. And to me, I've always been a root cause person. I've always wanted to know really what's going on in my body. I also don't drink alcohol. I've never done drugs. So I'm always in my, natural state. And for me, if I masked that by taking these things, would they have helped me sleep? Yes, but they wouldn't have allowed me to get to the root cause of what was causing my sleep to be so brutal, which was stress. Okay. And so that's why I never took those things. And of course, everyone is always suggesting it, and I just never gave into it. And so it's no judgment if you do. Like, obviously, sleep is so, so important. That's why I'm even doing this recording. However, I want you to consider that. I want you to consider that if you're taking things to band-aid the sleep, are you ever going to be able to really get to the root cause of what's causing you to struggle to sleep so bad? Okay. And it's going to be an uncomfortable period while you're trying to figure that out. But I can only speak from my own experience. I'm so glad I never did those things because it gave me an opportunity. It pushed me to a breaking point of really having to deal with my burnout and my stress. And because it pushed me to that point, my life has forever changed. Not only because my sleep has gotten better, but it has led me to live my life in a completely different way. It has led me to create a business where I help people do this. Like, it just changed my life for the better because I wasn't willing to mask the sleep or band-aid the sleep just to feel better in the moment. Okay. So I say that with no judgment. I say that with compassion, but if you're in that place where you are relying on something to help you sleep, I definitely want you to consider that. And, for instance, with my clients, as they go through my protocol and my program, when they get better at managing and processing their own stress, they become less reliant on all these things, less reliant on energy drinks, less reliant on weed, less reliant on sleeping pills, all of that. And it's never even an intention from the beginning to be like, we're going to get off this stuff. It's like 6, 7 weeks into the program, they go, I haven't needed to take a pill. I haven't had to smoke. I haven't had to take an energy drink, energy drink in weeks. And I didn't even realize it. Like, it's a natural byproduct of learning to get better at processing your stress. So I just wanted to mention that. Going back to waking up in the middle of the night. Again, 9 times out of 10, it's because you're in fight or flight. You might need to engage yourself a little bit, but try not to turn any lights on. Try not to go to your phone. This is a moment where, like, just trying to get into your body in a calm way will hopefully help you go back to sleep. Again, for me, what it's been is, if I need to do a little bit of stretching, maybe I need to get up and walk around for a moment. And that's like 30 seconds, you know what I mean? Just to tell my body it's safe. I get back into bed. I go into a nice thought process again, which is thinking about something that makes my nervous system feel calm. And usually that brings me back to sleep. If that's really struggling for you, you could try putting on a meditation, a yoga nidra meditation, or doing some breath work, and hopefully that will help. Okay. Now we come to morning time. Hopefully you've had a good night's sleep. But regardless of whether you have or haven't, these are my go-to practices. So first of all, my phone has been out of the room all night. When my alarm goes off, I will go get my phone. Okay. This is just personally what my morning routine practice is right now. It changes every few months. This is what it's been consistently for about the last 6 months. And I'm also a big proponent of, you need to feel this out for yourself. Again, I'm just telling you guys what has worked for me. So currently what I do is I go get my phone, I shut off the alarm, I bring it back to bed. I do not check anything on my phone. Okay. I also have no notifications on my phone except for like text message and phone calls. If your phone's on do not disturb, none of that's going to come through anyways. If I see any of that there, like, I don't have my text messages so you can read the message on the screen. It just says message. So I don't check anything. Okay. I shut off my alarm. I come back to bed and I do at least 30 minutes of meditation. Okay. Now I've also set my alarm up for a time where I allow myself to have that 30 minutes of meditation, then get ready, then start my work day. So you'll have to plan that out time-wise for what your body needs for sleep and what time you need to start work at. Also, side note, ladies, we have to keep in mind that the majority of the time we will need more sleep than men. So if you have a husband or a spouse or a partner that you live with, you are probably going to need more sleep than him, especially in different times of your cycle. Do not try and compare yourself to that man's sleep. Okay. That's going to drive you nuts. If your man's getting up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and hitting the gym and you're like, well, I don't have the energy to do that. You're not supposed to be wired the same way he is. We're on a 28-day hormonal cycle on average. They're on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. Like, my boyfriend can get up in the morning and shoot right up and be ready. I'm a slow waker and he knows that. So he lets me do my thing. I've stopped trying to get up at the crack of dawn with him and like shoot right up. We're wired differently. And again, ladies, the better you can get at embracing that and not comparing yourself to men, the easier it's going to be on your nervous system. Okay. So again, I shut off my alarm. I come back to bed. I don't check anything on my phone, and I have a meditation I go to right away. I have 3 that I like to cycle through. I know which one I want to put on. I hit that, boom, and I listen to my meditation while I'm coming out of my sleep trance. Okay. Obviously, my meditations are all based around something that I want to set the intention for that day. So right now, for me, I have one that's solely based around abundance and the life I want to create, what that looks like. I have one based in self-love and just like being that source of validation and acceptance and love for yourself. And then I have one from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's incredible. And essentially it's the same practice of he walks you through of embodying what you want to attract in this world and embodying it both in your mind and your heart, living that out for the moment. So it's like what I could want for my day or what I could want just for like my next 10-year goals, just walking through that process. Okay. So I give myself 30 minutes of me time first thing in the morning. Now, again, there's lots of things that you can do out there. It's also good to get up and get 10 minutes of sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning. Super good for your hormones and activating the body and getting you proactive and managing your hormones throughout the day and serotonin activation. A lot of people like to work out first thing in the morning because, again, your energy levels are highest. So you can consider these things for you too. This is just what's been working for me. After the 30 minutes, now I'm allowed to check my phone. I'm allowed to check my messages. I message the people I love first thing. I'm allowed to check my email and I'm allowed to check my socials, okay? But that's after having 30 minutes designated for myself. And the reason I've switched this is because I used to check my phone first thing in the morning when I was in my last career. And right away, I went into fight or flight because I saw an email from this person and this person and this person and this person. And it's like, no wonder I was burnt out. It's like immediately I went into work mode and I'm not even out of bed yet, right? Like no transition time, no nothing. Like it was just my mornings were rushed, my mornings were anxious, my mornings were dread. My mornings are not that anymore, okay? So I take my 30 minutes, then I get up. Now, you will hear some of these big business guys, Hormozy, for example, which I love a lot of his content. He'll say the most important thing to him, I'm paraphrasing, is building a business. So he's going to check his phone first thing. Okay. Some of you that might work for, but what you need to pay attention to is how do your mornings feel? If your mornings feel like shit and you feel like you're rushing and you're all over the place and you're anxious and you're just struggling to get out the door, then you need to do something different. If you can look at your phone first thing and be like, oh, this feels good, then I'm not going to tell you any different. I'm not going to pretend that what works for me has to work for everybody else, right? But you need to pay attention to what is happening in your body first thing in the morning based on the practice that you have. If it feels rushed and all over the place and chaotic, something needs to change. Okay? I check my phone. I change, I get myself ready for the day, I come out and now I go to my computer and I can start working at this time, okay? Sometimes I will work out first thing in the morning. Lately that hasn't been the case. Sometimes I'll stretch first thing in the morning. Lately that hasn't been the case. Again, I'm being fully transparent with you guys. Really right now my morning is just that 30 minutes of meditation and that's been working for me so far, okay? But again, if you want to get up and move, if you want to, my most important thing with the morning thing is just it's got to be some time for you. I don't care what you do during that time for you. I don't care if you go for a run. I don't care if you go for a walk. I don't care if you meditate. I don't care if you stretch. I don't care what you do. Just don't give your power away to your phone before you give your power to yourself, right? Like that's the whole premise of it is like, as soon as you give your attention to your phone, it's no longer about you and and everything in that phone comes before you because there's no way you can isolate it. It's no way you can be like, oh, I'm just going to check my text messages and I'm not going to check my email and I'm not going to check my socials. Like it's once you open it, it's a waterfall of stimulation and people needing something from you, right? So like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you can give yourself in the morning, that's your time to set the tone. It's your life. You're the only person you can control. And so that's why that time is so important because it's like you set the tone for what's going to be in your day. And the minute you give your power to them, that's the minute you lose control of your time, of your energy, and of your life. Right. And I lived that way for so long. So I get it. All it takes is just some intentional time in the morning and it will make all the difference. Okay. Once I get my work started, that's kind of it. Now I'm going into a regular work day. Some side notes I'll mention: coffee first thing in the morning versus coffee after breakfast or with breakfast is two completely different things. Okay. So if you're in fight or flight all day, you probably like to have a coffee first thing in the morning. That is killing your adrenals and that is keeping that cortisol on blast. You will crash. Okay. So if you are someone who needs your coffee, my recommendation is just having some protein first and then consuming your coffee after. Okay. Coffee on an empty stomach is really hard on the body. I'm not saying you can't have it. I'm just saying it's really hard on the body. And especially if you're fight or flighter, like Honestly, I know you guys aren't going to like this. If you're in fight or flight, you actually want to stay away from caffeine. Okay. That's one of the regulating practices is you want to stay away from it. But I know a lot of you have been conditioned to have that first thing in the morning because that's supporting the fight or flight. It's making you feel comfortable in that state. That's why you consume it. And that's why you feel like you need it. You don't actually need it. You've just trained yourself to believe it. Okay. So I'm not telling you don't drink coffee, but if you do, have it with a high protein breakfast as well, and it's going to not be so hard on your body in the process. Okay. So that's my morning routine. That's it. Like it's pretty simple. That's what works for me. I hope it can help you. Maybe you want to pick one or two things from that. Maybe you want to do it all. I don't know. Maybe you want to reach out to me and talk about what could or couldn't work for you. I'm all ears. But it was really important for me to do this episode because there is so much content out there and sometimes it's hard to know where to start. And I also wanted to tell you from someone who had probably one of the worst sleep cycles I've ever seen. Like, I don't know anyone else who was really worse than I was, that it can get better. And it's always coming back to stress and how you're processing stress, how you're managing stress, and how you're optimizing your stress, which essentially just means how much stress are you holding in your body unnecessarily? How much are you retaining in the body? Right. And when we can get better at that, at releasing it, at processing it, at getting it out of the system or shifting it however we need to, this is when the quality of our life completely changes. Right. Like, I am a firm believer that the quality of your life is based on the quality of your sleep. Like, it's just so imperative. And so hopefully this can help. If any of you have any other tips I didn't talk about that has worked really well for you, please shoot me a message on Instagram or LinkedIn because I'd love to know more. You could send me an email too. But this is stuff that fascinates me. And also, these are things that are ever evolving. What's working for me now might change in the future. I don't know. Like, that's just the nature of humans. But what I do know is we do really well on rituals, on routine, and our bodies respond really well to routine. And so when you can put that in place, everything goes up. Happiness, peace, productivity, problem solving, creativity, love, connection, all of it goes up.